Welcome back to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. A couple things. I'm not going to talk too loud, but also Niall is being very loud. He's in this room with me and he's stimming verbally. But this is a story time, so I want to share my path. This week I had a pretty big revelation about why I am in this part of the world that I am in. And how it goes back. Now, I've already known this on my own personal path. I have known. Oh, I could use my telephone. This way we can get some of the noise out. Hey guys. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. So hopefully this helps. So I okay, when Niall and I were looking for a place to live, we left LA and we ended up in Prescott, where I went to college, which is where my parents had their retirement land. And then after my dad passed away, my mom sold it, and I ended up there instead. Now, after Niall and I didn't really work out in Prescott, then we went to Chino Valley. And Chino Valley took us to Cottonwood, and Cottonwood brought us up here to this area that we live in now. And the thing about this area up here is that right before my father got diagnosed with cancer, he came on a mission trip to the Navajo reservation. Now, I left the church after my father died, and I had a relationship with my pastor, mostly because he came to visit me in jail in the mental institutions, and he was really close with my dad, so I kind of adopted him as a father after that. But I did not go to church anymore, and we didn't really align. He was pretty conservative in his beliefs. But all that to say is, Niall, calm it down just a little bit, buddy. This is why I have headphones. Mommy is also... I recognized the other day that Niall and I don't have to mask around each other, which is pretty dope. We can be fucking weird as hell. But it gets really loud. Anyway, I just want to get this done. So, the other day I made a friend who is Navajo, indigenous, but grew up in a Christian household and has very conservative / MAGA beliefs. And I mentioned this in a reading... no. I mentioned this in a reading the other day. I don't know. I mentioned him briefly. But it was an interesting moment for me having conversations with him. And I am not having conversations with anyone anymore about that. I think ever since that man got shot, things are weird now. I think that was like a declaration of war for MAGA. But anyway, so I am not really trying to talk to people who believe in those things. But I do want to talk about religion and colonialism. And so for me, having that conversation with him, because I was like, hey, I brought in, I was like, so as a Native person, I was like, what resonates about Trump for you? And I mean, that's just the area I'm in. It's a very Trump area. There's a lot of Mormons up here. Let me see. I want to see something quick. How did... So, where my land is called, oh, see, that's so interesting. Is that why everyone voted for him? I'm looking up how Trump handled COVID for Navajo Nation, because there's a lot of indigenous folks who voted for Trump, and it's interesting to me. There's a cognitive dissonance there. But anyway, that's not the conversation. The conversation technically is about how my father was single-handedly involved in that hegemony, into that belief that this belief of nation state versus culture, right? So my dad had a hand in that. I mean, technically I had a hand in that too. I went on a couple mission trips to to Native reservations as well when I was in high school. In fact, I was on a mission trip when I decided to leave the church after my dad died. We were in Montana on a reservation. So anyway, there's a lot happening in my head and in my mind and in my spirit right now around this, and it just feels like I've known that Niall and I were supposed to be here, because I mean I was looking for land for a long time, and I was like, where can I buy a plot of land for Niall to have a home, like a forever home, right? And we ended up here, and it felt right because it was called Sun Valley. I mean, it is called Sun Valley. And, I've referred to Niall as my son, S-U-N, and his middle name is Valley. He's named after ancient Egypt. So for me, it was like very much, oh yes, this is where we're supposed to be. And I've really focused on being aligned in my path, in the way that I am decolonizing for my lineage, the way that I am breaking cycles for my lineage, and this being one of them. And until last week, it had only been like a theory, like a spiritual belief of mine that like I'm here to right these wrongs. But then last week when that conversation happened, it was very apparent to me that like, oh, I'm here to right these wrongs. Like I'm this person to support people pulling away from the church, pulling away from colonial idea, pulling away from indoctrination, right? And a lot of this has to do with fear. I mean, the government fucked people up, the Native folks in this country. Mostly, I mean, the residential schools, I mean, that was only like 2 generations ago. And also what year was it? You could buy like Native children for like $10 in like the 60s, I think, maybe even the 70s. So like the way that the Native folks have been treated by Trump, and not Trump, at the American government, which Trump is holding that position right now, but the way that folks have been treated historically, and then having missionaries, right? My whole family is like liberal, conservative people. Like some of them believe in human rights, but they do so by like writing checks to charity. I have colonial lineage in the generation before me. My aunt has a building in Ghana with her name on it at this like missionary church situation. And her brother, so that's my father's sister, and then their brother, my uncle, my dad's brother, he made it all the way to the colonel rank in the army, and he did a lot of colonizing in Africa as well, like within Kenya. And so when I was in my undergrad, I was really looking into going to Africa, into being that support, but I didn't have the understanding of white savior complex at that point in time. I didn't understand the implications of being a white woman doing that work. I just didn't have a concept of the white savior complex until my master's degree and until my marriage. There was a lot of work I had to do, anti-racist work I had to do within that relationship to figure out why I felt these things, right? There's so much decolonizing and around being a white woman and wanting to put on this savior cap, right? Which is that very much missionary based thinking, like I know better than you, so let me help you find this direction, right? And there are still times that I find myself in that space, and I think, like everything else, healing, decolonizing, anti-racist work, while we're all still alive within these systems, it's a constant process. It's not something that you can graduate from. While these systems still exist and we hold privilege within them, it's something that we're constantly going to be having to check ourselves on, right? And so I think that it was just interesting last week when I had that conversation, because I was just like, whoa, okay. Like the things that this guy said to me, he said a couple things about how, well, majority of this area are people who are MAGA or who are Trumpers. And then he said something about gay flags. And I was like, what do like gay folks, you know? And like he said something about like, oh, we don't have any gay flags around here, which is funny because I have like a whole squad of these high schoolers that are queer, that, you know, like they are very queer, and a lot of them are native. And so it was just interesting. I'm just like, wow, like being in this area, I'm part of this political party, and they're like, we need to open up city chapters, and I'm like, I don't think this is the city. I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to open a city chapter up here. You only need 5 members, but still, I'm like, I don't think this is the place. And so there's a lot going on, but there's a lot coming up for me in this, because I'm just like, I do my best to be in my integrity. I do my best to be on the right side of things, like not politically, but like correct, like ethically. And I wanted to share this story. So my dad came on a mission trip. I grew up in suburbia, okay, white suburbia. I actually grew up living next door to Brett Favre before he fucked up his career, like in the 90s, in his heyday. Why are you staring at me? I'm so pissed at these cats. And my dad had a lot of my parents. My parents really, what's the word for this? There was a lot of Native American artifacts in our home as decoration. Rugs from the Navajo tribes, pottery and baskets from the Hopi people. I don't know why I said people like that. That was awkward. From Hopi. My parents were really, my dad was obsessed with Arizona. He wanted to live in Arizona, which is why they had that retirement land. But if they would have retired in Prescott, it would have been another Republican. Prescott is incredibly Republican. There would have been another Republican couple there, right? Instead of me, who I actually got radicalized when I was at the Prescott College. That's what really, really got me to where I am today. Well, it started my journey. But I wanted to share because I feel like in these times we can make a difference. We can plant seeds. We can have hard conversations, and we can allow ourselves to find common ground, right? So like I said, like when this guy and I were having this conversation, I was like, he said something to me about how, like, you don't have to be afraid of me. And I don't know if I said this before or after, but I was like, well, please don't kill me when shit pops off, because like MAGA is violent, right? And I'm like, why are you backing this? And that's what I said. I'm like, what resonates? And then he shared this music with me, and it's like this underground like music, and I'm like, okay. The lyrics though were very much, they're pretty, I mean, I wouldn't call them revolutionary lyrics, but they sure as fuck weren't like conservative MAGA lyrics. They were like, I guess there's just this, within neoliberalism, which is like what Reagan started in the 80s, there's just been such an individualization. But now what we're seeing, so like everyone can do their own thing, but like their own thing is within the confines of like being socially acceptable. And social media has only made that worse, right? Like you see everyone making ads about the same things, you know, you see everyone buying the same stuff. You see, I mean, it's just like a carbon copy of like every it's giving me Lorax, that scene where everything has to go through the factory. And you know, the process of decolonizing and healing ourselves is this process of undoing that, of releasing ourselves from that conveyor belt that the system is forcing us under, right? And I think if my dad, so my father came, I want to talk about a couple things. While he was in this mindset, my dad was a very conservative man, very religious man. And so I don't know how he was when he came to this mission trip, but what I can guess is that it was very savior based, right? I mean, I feel like he wasn't always, I feel like he appreciated learning about things, but I feel like he always had to have the last word, right? Which is, again, hey, come on, Niall, don't go in there. There's no reason for you to go in there right now. Thank you. We are not allowing any cats in our bedroom, so I have to keep the door closed. Anyway, so I think what I have written down on my notes is not acknowledging the government truth and harm and the trauma for indigenous folks, while also pretending to be like, well, not even pretending, because it was something that he really believed in, but like I remember when my uncle once, when he was talking about Kenya once, as a person within the army at this point in time. He was in the U.S. Army conducting democratic, is his language, democratic proceedings for a community, small communities. So, okay, so this is colonization. This is, you went there and you colonized, and you're calling it democracy, right? And I remember him telling me that his process, or their process as the U.S. military, was to give people a handful of seeds or rocks. It was something little that they could hold in their hand, and it was something that was nature. I remember that explicitly because I was like, this is so fucked up. He told me that so what they did was everyone got their own seeds or rocks, and then I feel like there was probably a language barrier, and then they voted by placing their seeds in like a cup or, you know, a dish. So however many seeds would end up, and then they would take majority, which is how colonizers work, right? They call it a democracy, but that's not what this is, right? And so it was like he was sharing this story as like a hero, right? Because of the hegemony in which the United States, Hollywood, everything has run, right? It's always a white savior. There's always a white man saving the world somewhere, right? In some fucking movie. When in all reality, we know that white men are the perpetrators of the most violence, and like ridiculous violence too, right? Like pedophilia, school shootings, mass shootings, rape, DV, right? White men are holding the line on all of those statistics. I actually just had something on my Instagram. And so for me, growing up without that white man, I mean, I see how different I am from my sister and my mother, who have always needed a white man's validation for every decision that they make. And because I grew up after my father passed away, I didn't have that. And so I am the black sheep. I'm doing things differently. But I believe that is divine intervention. So here, I have this list right here. White men are 28% of the U.S. population and 55% of kidnappers, 56% of rapists, 58% of mass shooters. I feel like that's not right. 59. I feel like that's a much higher one. 59% of child porn arrests, 62% of statutory rapists or pedophiles, 63% of prostitution solicitors, 68% of, I don't know what this is, NFA offenders, I don't know what that is, and 75% of incest perpetrators. So, like, those numbers are crazy, right? So I just wanted to get on here and share, because I think up until last week, my idea of this work was very based in theory, in the work that I've done up until this point. And I think last week, having this conversation, it just completely reframed my role here. And the way to go about that in a respectful manner, right? And what that looks like for me is different than what it looks like for other people, but I think that was just, it was very important. And also, I don't talk to men my age. I don't really talk to anybody, but this guy is 2 years younger than me, and I haven't been around men my age. It's like baby daddy's like 25 years older than me, and I just haven't. So I was like around a lot of OGs in LA. Just like he has a couple friends like Sean. Sean and I are the same age, or I don't know, we're around the same age. But either way, I mean, I had a husband, so it wasn't like we were like, you know. Anyway, so it was just weird because I haven't talked to men my age in a really long time. And so it was like, just, even that was just like a weird conversation. So I was like, I don't even know what to talk about with men my age. And then he was like, I'm MAGA. And I'm like, okay, well, that made it easy. I'm good here. So, you know, I think it's surprising, but I think, I don't know, I'm thinking about a lot, but I just wanted to share this story. This is how I ended up where I am. And I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I would love to set roots here, but I think in just the state of the world, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what area is going to be hit next by some fucking crazy fire or flood or whatnot. And New Mexico next door to us. Niall, can you take it down just a little bit, honey? There's been a couple areas, in the state next door, and there's just like crazy shit happening. So I'd like to stay here, but I also need to know if this is where I'm supposed to be or not. And I think last week it was like, yes, of course, but I don't know for how long, right? Like, because when I came here, like to this area, I was like, I want to put roots down. And you know that we're not doing that. We're not really building on our land. I'm building a lot of other stuff, but my land is just kind of sitting there. And I think that's because I'm poor, and I don't know if it's the right time to invest in that kind of shit the way that destruction is happening. I think that's the main thing, is that I just don't know if the investment is worth it in this moment. Bombs are dropping everywhere, all these natural disasters. I don't have $30,000 for a well, and if I do get that money, I don't want that well to get ruined or have cement poured into it like what they're doing in Palestine. People are fucking crazy right now. So those are the revelations I had. I've been really just in the space of theory, and now theory within healing though. Like, I've been healing my lineage at a very deep level, but now I'm like starting to get back out into my extroverted ways. Niall's old enough to we're getting more out there. I'm going to be launching the Arch Mobile. I want to be making connections. I want to be a pillar in the community. But I wasn't ready up until this point. And so now I feel like last week when I had this conversation, I felt a little uneasy about people knowing my stance on things. But then, that didn't last very long, because I was like, I'm in the right as far as my integrity and my consciousness is concerned. And I believe I'm here to support people reconnecting. That's my whole thing. That's this channel. You go look at my bio. It's reconnection through healing healing through reconnection to yourself, to the collective, and the natural world. And so that's where it was like, this conversation just really highlighted how I'm actually doing that. And I'm doing it opposite of my ancestors, because my ancestors did it in a colonial way, in a religious way. And so it was like, for me it was like, so I was like 13 when my dad did that mission trip, because then he got sick when I was 14 or 15. He died in 2002. And so for me, having this conversation with this guy who's 2 years younger than me, I was like, maybe you crossed paths with my dad, or like maybe one of your relatives was familiar with him. They were in the church, they're Christian. And so I was like, I didn't go that far deep into it because I didn't want to. But for me, it was just like, it was just this really interesting connection, I guess. It just really helped bring to perspective what I actually am doing here and the impact that I am supposed to be making. Not in a savior way, but I feel like I have enough privilege to be leading this charge. I'm not really worried about, like, I've got a stop bombing baby sticker on my car. I thought about taking it off, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to take it off, because I want to remain in my integrity and in my consciousness. I'm not going to allow fear to cripple me or change my behavior. And like I said, like, I had a little bit of fear arise when that guy was talking about his beliefs and shit, but I'm like, no, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, I can hold my own, and I told him that. I'm like, I'm not afraid of people. I don't want to die from some weird ass hatred that, people do. But it's just interesting. And his response is, he said, he's like, I'm not afraid of anything. Because I said, I'm like, are you familiar with, or have you heard about how folks who are native or are in like bigger cities are being, ICE isn't able to make those distinctions, right? They just see, like, skin color. And so I said that. I was like, so have you heard about this? Have you heard about your people being targeted, right? And so there's this interesting cognitive dissonance amongst folks And we talk about this in our political party all the time, and that's why I've talked about or made videos about like proximity to whiteness and other stuff, because it's just like this system has done such a great job of dividing people by race or by skin color or by ethnicity and nationality, but the system as a whole doesn't honor any of those differences. Again, it's like that meme, that Family Guy meme where what's the dad's name, gets pulled over and there's that card with all the skin colors, and it's like you're either safe if you're light, or you're, you know, if you're darker than this, then you're not, right? And so I don't know, it's just such an interesting thing. But for me, it was very telling of my space here, especially as a mother to a son who is brown. I mean, technically he is black, but he is very white passing. And colorism is a whole conversation within the black community as well. And there's a conversation on TikTok talking about white women and hair color, and how I just saw a woman translate that for black folks. She's like, so that's like colorism in the white community for, you know. And so it's real. And it's just really interesting. So I just wanted to share this. There's a lot of layers, but I know that I'm here to support. I feel like I'm here to hold the line and stand my ground as someone who it's an interesting space to be in. A lot of white women are Karens. I'm not a Karen. It's an interesting space to be in. So I wanted to share this. I wanted to share what it means to me, how important this is to me and my lineage, and how hey, it's okay, I'm almost done. I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for being here. I hope that you guys could hear me. I'm gonna watch this back for a few minutes and make sure. Have a good one.